gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of DeepSeededGeek. Today we are launching a brand new series that I'm doing called Franchise Fridays, where I look at some of the franchises that I have grown to love over the years, and we're going to look at them in depth. So today, we're going to kick it off with the series that I have so much to say about. It's insane. God of War. Now, the first time I saw this game, it was actually an advertisement in a comic book I was reading at the time. I had heard a little bit about the game, but there was nothing that really compelled me to go out and buy the game. And the artwork, it looked Greek mythology, slay everything, kill, maim, destroy, you know, general kind of violent video game kind of stuff, which is all well and good, but at the time it just wasn't grabbing me for some reason. But I bought a game magazine that came with a little, they used to come with like the PlayStation discs in there that you could pop in and try out demos of a whole bunch of different games. And it just so happened I got one of those, and God of War demo was on there. So I popped it in, I tried it out, and it just gave you the first little bit of the level of God of War 1, where you're on the ship and you fight the Hydra and everything, and that alone made my jaw hit the ground. And the very next day I ran out, bought the game because I wanted to know what happened next. From there on, it's just been a love affair for me and this game series. So what we're going to do here is basically you're going to be seeing some game footage from the entire trilogy. I'm not including the PSP games because, well, honestly, they're great games and everything, but I just don't feel like they're the true trilogy. Do you know what I mean? They're great add-ons. They're like novellas to a great book series going on, you know? So, we're going to be focusing on the 3 games that were published by Sony Computer Entertainment and developed by Sony Santa Monica. Now, this game series is one of the big reasons why I got back into video games. I had never seen a video game narrative on this scale, this size, and just the production values alone. We're talking the voice acting, the caricatures, the music. My god, the music is epic. The visual style of the whole thing, and the grand scale of the whole game. But we're going to get into great detail with that in a moment here. So, the first thing we're going to touch on is the story. The Greek mythology behind this game series, the great reimagining of all the gods and monsters throughout this series is just incredible. Much like how you see a lot of comic books reinvent their superheroes and their villains year after year, this video game took what Greek mythology has laid out and just tweaked it in such a way that it made it fresh and exciting and new, as much as you can for a Greek mythology. The story basically revolves around the idea of revenge. It's very Greek tragic in that way. You play as Kratos, of course, who's the main character that we see throughout the entire series. And pretty much his history is that he was a general of the Spartan army, and at one point he was overrun by a horde of barbarians. And when he was at the mercy of his enemy, he looked to the gods and he begged the god of war Ares to bestow upon him the power to defeat the entire army. And for that, he would sacrifice himself to be a puppet for the gods for the rest of his life. So that's fine. Ares comes down and grants him his wish, but he betrays him in a way that he pretty much sent Kratos on a war path of destruction just in his name. And in the process, he ends up accidentally killing his wife and child. The reason why he looks pale and pasty and white is because that white kind of makeup looking thing that he's got going are actually the ashes of his dead wife and child. So he's forever got this burden plastered across his skin to remind him of how far he's fallen. I mean, that's just, oh my god. You hear that, it's like, oh, I want to play this game. So you can understand why this guy's a little bit pissed throughout this entire series. So his revenge is going after the God of War Ares and taking it out on him. And thus begins the God of War trilogy. And from there, it just explodes. It goes from Kratos wanting revenge against Ares, and then he wants revenge against Zeus, and then he wants revenge against the whole damn world. You know, he's not going to be satisfied until he kills pretty much anything that gets in his way. He's just pissed off rage incarnate. So if ever you're having a bad day, I recommend you play this game, because it's kind of satisfying that way, to kind of let your rage go all crazy like. Now, to include so much Greek mythology into one game is impressive by any standards, but keeping it fresh and exciting over a huge trilogy is beyond an amazing feat. I mean, at the end of God of War, you go, well, that was incredible. They hit every high note that you could possibly do in Greek mythology. How are they ever going to top this? Then comes the sequel, and they do it. They find new little, like, pinholes of, like, the Greek mythology kind of stories, and they flesh it out to become these epic scenes. Characters that are just, like, you know, heard of. Like, you've got Prometheus, you've got Icarus, you've got Hades, Zeus, of course, you've got Hercules, you've got all these characters, Athena, Poseidon, these gods and monsters and demigods all over the place, and they pop up in the most incredible ways. It's like having a cameo appearance in a movie from one of your favorite actors. It's just incredible. Now, it would be one thing if you could just go all, like, batshit crazy in this game and just annihilate everybody and have that be it, but that would be a very sour one note to kind of last as a character kind of model. But Kratos, as he goes through, you feel like every little thing. Like, yeah, when you're ripping some dude apart, you feel rage. When you're betrayed by the gods, you want to kill them. When you have flashbacks of your wife and child, you have that pain in your chest of, like, sorrow and regret. Kratos is very, like, one-dimensional in his, not one-dimensional, but singular vision in his revenge. But every so often, you get a crack beneath the surface that shows that he is still human. And that one human part was his love for his family. And now that that's gone, he just has nothing but rage left inside him. It's heartbreaking in a way. Much like how in Halo 4, you finally get to see a little bit of the human in Master Chief when Cortana goes away. I hope I didn't spoil that for anybody. But anyway, it's comparative to that. So as Xbox and Microsoft, they have their Halo franchise. This is Sony's big franchise to deal with. Now, the gameplay for God of War is all done in a third-person perspective, and I kind of dig this for a lot of my games. It's one thing to have a first-person perspective, because everybody likes that because it makes you feel immersed in the game, that you are actually there, living the life of these characters and interacting with these people. But for a game like God of War, I think the third-person perspective actually suits it better than a first-person. Number one, you get to see Kratos in his action, and the big thing for me, being in third person, is that it distances myself from these horrific acts that Kratos does. So, I can tell you right now, like, if I was a first-person mode for God of War, I don't think I would play Kratos as brutal as he needs to be. You know, I would be the stealthy guy. I would be merciful in some places, where Kratos just has no mercy. He has no stealth. He just goes in head first and destroys anything that comes at him, okay? So instead of being the person that's ripping heads off and tearing limbs off and beating people to death with them, you can kind of distance yourself from that, and now you're kind of like the puppeteer for the whole thing. It's almost as if you've got an action movie in your hands, and you are the director. And so you can kind of walk away from it with your humanity intact and not feel too bad that you just took some, you know, random stranger and threw him in front of a skeleton, or threw him at a harpy to be ripped apart to shreds because you wanted a green globe that could give you some of your health bar back. Now, a lot of the combat actions are a combination between crazy combos and quick time events. Now, the combos aren't so crazy that they're on par with, like, arcades, where you need to do, like, the up, down, turn the stick, B, A, and then up, down, right, left kind of thing. It's nothing like that. They're pretty basic. You can get away with a little bit of button mashing for the most part, but when you see how some of the combos kind of come together and they just look so flashy, you want to do them all the time. And every time you upgrade your weapons, it's like a new boost to everything. You get new ways of doing some sweet combos that you had before, and your weapons deal more damage and they have a little bit more polish to the whole thing. Plus there are all these other items that you can do, magic items that you can kind of do, and with every new feature that's added, it's just something more epic than the last to make the game feel that much more amazingly huge. Now this game was a big factor in the quick time events coming back in a big form in video games. Some people liked it, some people didn't, you know, it's a matter of opinion. For myself, I kind of dig them, because number one, after doing all the combos and everything like that, or taking on like hundreds and hundreds of enemies at a time and just completely button mashing, my hands get really sore and tired. So when a quick time event comes along, number one, it's a nice little break from just pounding away at the controller, and number two, it gives you a chance to kind of sit back, look at the game, and actually enjoy some of these moments that the game creators are doing for this kind of medium, and it is incredible stuff. So for me, I think it's a good addition. Now, if I had one small complaint about the gameplay, it is the balance beam sections. I hate these. Any kind of platformer game where you have to like scale across this tiny little log and oh, you're tilting to one side, you better shift to the other side. I'm the guy who always falls into the water. And you'll see in some of this gameplay, I fall countless times into the drink, okay? Just because I can't figure out how to do that fine maneuvering where you're walking along the beam and you're holding the controller in the direction, and then the camera just shifts slightly. So you gotta shift your control knob the appropriate way so you don't fall into the drink. I can't do that stuff very well. So it's annoying for me that I can decimate hundreds of enemies at a time and rip the heads off a god, but I can't cross a freaking balance beam. That's just annoying to me. But this game has to be challenging somehow, I guess. Now let's talk about something that the God of War series is known for, and that's its graphical power. At the time of God of War 1, the game was at the height of graphical power. Not so much with the character models and everything, that, you know, at the time they did look good and they interacted well, and just the animations were pretty fantastic for the time that they were in. But the graphical achievement was more so with the scale of this game. You felt like an ant crawling up a skyscraper most of the time throughout all of the levels. The scale that is achieved in this game is just insane. At one point in God of War, you're going from beating a three-headed Hydra in the ocean to scaling the back of a Titan to get to the top of this kind of Greek palace where you have to find Pandora's box and bring it all the way across a desert again. It's insane, the size and scope that you have to do. And then you grow to the size of Ares, the God of War, to do battle with him. It's insane, and that was on a game on the PlayStation 2. You fast forward to now, like in the PlayStation 3 generation, where you have God of War 3 and God of War Ascension, and it's insane. Not only do you revisit that original Titan from God of War, you fight him. So it's insane. I mean, in the opening sequences of God of War 3, you have to fight up the back of one of the Titans, Gaia, along her arm, and while you're doing that, the camera will pan away and see Gaia's arm swing out in agony, and then zoom right back in past her shoulder, up her elbow, to her wrist, where you are fighting skeletons. I mean, it is insane the amount of scale that you see in this game, and it just gets bigger and bigger. Now, one thing to note about this series is that when it first came out, God of War was doing its cutscenes in CG, okay, which is pretty much computer-generated stuff, and then it would cut to the video game. Now, that's all well and good. It gives a little bit of a polish and shine and everything. But when you had games like Metal Gear Solid doing that from day one, it's kind of a letdown. I mean, don't get me wrong, the CG cutscenes were beautiful and everything, but at the time the graphics were pretty damn impressive enough that they could have stood to do it like just on their own, which is what they finally did starting with God of War 3. all the cutscenes in God of War 3 are from their in-game engine, and it is beautiful. Some of the character models look photorealistic. I mean, they're over the top exaggerated in their musculature and anatomy and everything like that, but their facial animations, their movements, everything is just so lifelike. It is insane. The amount of detail that they can get on Kratos, let alone the rest of the environment, is nothing but astonishing. But enough gushing about the graphics and what I think of the game. Let's turn to what the critics actually thought of this game. It is now a flagship title for PlayStation, right next to Metal Gear Solid and Uncharted. If you go to Metacritic, you'll see that all of the games in the trilogy are above 90, which means damn near everybody in the gaming medium pretty much thought this game series was just the bomb from day one. Now, it has won multiple Game of the Year awards for each game in the series, as well as many technical achievements for the graphics, sound, and design choices throughout the series. Now, one thing that I think is worth mentioning is about God of War 2. I think at the time of its release, the PlayStation 3 was either 1 year into its cycle or just being announced. I know that a lot of next-gen games were being touted as Game of the Year options, but God of War went toe-to-toe with next-generation games, and sometimes came out on top for Game of the Year. That's how impressive that game was. And PlayStation 3 did one even better when they released God of War 3 as far as I'm concerned. To this day, God of War 3 is one of the most beautiful games on any system out there. Now, I have only recently bought God of War Ascension, and I'm really looking forward to it. I know some people are naysaying a little bit about it, that it's not as long as the usual campaigns in a God of War game, and the graphics aren't pushing it too far away from God of War 3. That's like saying you have a movie that's just as good as the best movie you've ever seen, and that's what you're complaining about. Dude, I got no complaints about that. I say bring it on. So I'm looking forward to God of War Ascension. Just as much as I have loved the whole God of War series, I'm sure I will love this one too. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring a close one of my favorite series of all time, God of War. I hope you enjoyed this little opinion piece on the series, and if you've played God of War and you enjoyed it as much as I do, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Like and favorite this video if you want to share it with your friends and family, that's very cool too. And subscribe, because I put out videos every Monday and Friday, and we will see you next time on DeepSeededGeek. Take care.